Today on Riffs, Spirits, and Gear, we check out the Soothe2 plugin from Oeksound. In the world of audio plugins, there are a few plugins, in my opinion, that really changed the landscape of how things were done seemingly overnight. And when I first heard about Soothe, I was strictly told, don't tell anyone, shh. And that was all I needed to hear. That meant I had to have it right away. Now, seemingly reinventing the wheel, Soothe2 builds upon the foundation that was laid with the original Soothe plugin. And we're going to talk about that today. So before we go any further, you can consider this a sponsored video, as Oeksound have asked me to show you Soothe2, but all thoughts and opinions are mine. So for the last few years, Soothe and ergo Soothe2 have been staples in my audio toolbox whenever I'm doing anything audio related, voice work, full mixes, acoustic instrument stuff, noise removal on video tracks and all sorts of things. So for me to be able to do this video for you guys is super cool because honestly, right up front, I love me some Soothe. So what is Soothe? Well, Soothe, when you start to use it, you're kind of like, well, is this a de-esser? Is this a dynamic EQ? Is this a multi-band compressor? And it's none of those things, but it does share and cherry pick some traits from all of those things. And really, it's about resonance removal. So technically, I believe Oeksound call Soothe2 a dynamic resonance suppressor, which honestly is very accurate and very descriptive, and kudos to them for being able to come up with that name. However, it can be used for all sorts of things, really to remove harshness. Let's say, for example, if you have some washy overhead mics for cymbals on a drum kit, some weird string resonances, multiple instruments coming together and creating some clashing frequencies. Yeah, Soothe's got you. Now, the original Soothe plugin was really focused in the frequency ranges of the mid and upper end frequency spectrums. However, Soothe2 is the entire listening frequency palette. So this can also be used to remove, mud and low end related frequency issues as well. Now, I tend to think of Soothe2 as a Sonic Mop. It is my mix maintenance guy, my janitor for my mixes. Now, I want to stress though, that like with anything good, you can overuse this quite easily if you're pretty new to Soothe. So I would caution you to take it easy, and a little goes a long way with Soothe. So enough of my yapping. I have a full mix up from my band Dragged Under, and we have a song called The Real You. I have used several different instances in various places of Soothe2. I'm going to play you this mix, and then we're going to kind of dissect the individual parts and how I am using Soothe2 within the context of this mix. So here is part of The Real You.
Ready, set, go. Time to show. Who you really are behind the job tomorrow. I already know. Gonna be the one to set me on. What's all your soul? Right for the water, be left for the package we done with now.
So that mix is tight, it sounds huge, it's thick, it's fast, and really, it's fairly clean, if I don't say so myself. So let's go ahead and dive into Soothe. First, I'll tell you what you're looking at, and then we're gonna kind of break it down for the individual track pieces of this mix. So I wanna start with, I'll just grab the overheads. For example, this is the drum kit overheads. I'm gonna solo these overheads, and this is what they sound like with Soothe on. So what are we looking at? Well, on the right-hand side, we have, this is where the business happens of Soothe. This is the frequency spectrum. And you would think, like with a normal EQ, the higher my EQ points are, the more I'm adding. But in this case, it's the more you are subtracting within Soothe after it crosses this threshold, right? So I'm going to use an extreme example, and I'm going to move band 2, this orange guy right here. I'm going to move it up while playing back the overheads, and notice how the amount of reduction and what's being filtered and taken out down here increases, i.e. there's more going in the downward direction instead of up, because we're taking away, we're not adding. Okay, so I'm going to play that one more time isolated, and just pay attention to the graphical display right in this blue area, in the water, as it were. So really what we are seeing when we are looking at Soothe2 is we are seeing what remains, or what is left after having the junk removed. Now this is an extreme example, and I wouldn't normally do it this high, into the 12 dB range or anything like that. But this is just to graphically show you what Soothe is actually doing. Now over here on the left, we have some primary controls. Now this is the depth control. If I mouse over it, it'll tell me that this changes how much processing is applied. This is the amount knob. You can think of this as a mix knob, I guess, but really, the higher it goes, the more it's going to take away from the frequency. So let's go ahead and mess with the depth knob. Like I said, you can overuse this, and having it cranked up has some weird washy effects and stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend using it all the way up all the time or anything like that. Typically, I am operating in the -15 to up to 4 or 5 at most for me personally. But again, this just depends on the situation that you're in. Next, let's talk about sharpness. Now, sharpness is going to adjust how wide or narrow the cuts of the individual spikes that you see on the interface are. Let's see, adjust how sharp, the individual notches are, similar to an EQ or a Q on a typical EQ. This is pretty accurate. I'm going to mess with this and play this back one more time, and so you can see how wide and how narrow it can get. Now, right now, it's cranked up. You can see how wide it can get. Now it looks like water, but if I really want to sharpen the points and get really exacting on the frequencies, I can crank up the sharpness. Now with selectivity, it's kind of like sharpness, but this has to do with where Soothe is looking for the frequencies, not how it treats the frequencies after it has found the frequencies, okay? So this adjusts how selective the process is. Less selectivity results in more overall tone shaping, and less focuses the process on the narrower peaks. So let's go ahead and mess with that too. You can see it get pretty wide, but in a different way than when you're messing with the sharpness. So these two things we use in tandem and fine tune. So let's go ahead and move to the bass guitar track. Now, I typically will just live in the mid to upper mid, and sometimes a lot of the high end, not a ton of the high end, but 7K-ish or so is where I will be working with Soothe for the bass guitar. Now, here's what it sounds like with Soothe on. Now, if you're wondering, well, I wish I could hear what it is actually being removed. I want to hear just what I am not hearing when it's normally working. Well, you can do that with this Delta button, which is honestly one of my favorite features of Soothe and Soothe2. I like to hear what is actually going on. So I'm going to play this bass track. I'm going to switch Delta on and then mess with just the depth knob. And you can hear what is being taken out of the track. Now notice I am in hard mode. Now hard mode and soft mode, soft is just a little bit more transparent. Hard mode is a little bit more of an extreme mode, and it will also affect the sound in more of an obvious way than soft mode. Really use your ears on what you think is best, but I typically, for this kind of scenario, will be on hard mode. So now I want to talk about the rhythm guitars. Now, sometimes with high gain distorted guitars, you can get some weirdness in the distortion and in the overdrive. And sometimes within the crunchiness, you get kind of some weird overtones, and Soothe is really helpful for that. But actually, what I use it for, so I'll back up. In the old days, we still do this all the time as well. But for a long time, if you had a general issue with a frequency, you would kind of get a narrow Q and you would kind of sweep in the EQ and then pull that down, right? To get rid of a whistling or something like that. The problem with doing that is now notched all of the time, whether that whistle or issue frequency is being present or not, right? So for example, if I was on a guitar track and I had a weird resonance when I played a G and I notched it, well, that notch is also present when I'm playing the other areas of the guitar. And I don't necessarily want that. I only want the problem to go away when the problem occurs, if that makes sense. So I'm going to turn this EQ off, and with Soothe2, I can now just dynamically take care of any issues that I am having. So I'm going to go ahead and I isolate the rhythm guitars, and we're going to play around a little bit more with Soothe2. Now, something I want to point out is if you're familiar with just a standard EQ, each one of these bands are controllable with, the individual frequency that I can type in if I want. 778 hertz. It has a sensitivity, a Q, and a balance, and we can also affect the kind of curve we have: band shelf, bell, low shelf, high shelf, all of those good things. And if we want to listen to just a single band, we can do that. And this is also one of my favorite features in addition to the Delta feature. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again, and we're going to listen to just what this individual band is doing. This is very useful for pinpointing specific problem areas with, for example, a high gain guitar. Now, lastly, I want to bring up an instance of Soothe2 on my master output bus. Yes, that's right. I'm committing a huge mix sin. Don't put this on your bus. I hear that all the time from some of my audio friends, and I'm here to tell you, do whatever sounds good. there is a preset in here called Balance to the Grammy Awards that I think just sounds phenomenal. And this is not a preset of mine. This comes stock in Soothe 2. And this just kind of cleans up the entire mix. Now I'm going to turn the bypass and I'm going to play you this mix. And I'm going to switch it in and out. And I'm also going to hit the delta and let you hear what I'm removing from the entire mix. Okay. Now notice I don't have depth up a lot. This is definitely one of those instances where you could definitely overuse this, but I will play with this just to illustrate what I'm talking about for Soothe 2. All right. So here we go. I'm going to start with it bypassed and then engage it and then play with the depth knob. Do you hear how it's just kind of generally cleaning up? It's not fundamentally changing the sound of my mix, but what's happening is it's just kind of cleaning up the top end on all the top end instruments. At least that's what I am hearing. My cymbals, my high gain guitars, and my uppermost frequency part of Tony's voice is really just kind of getting scrubbed up a little bit. So the last thing I want to show you guys is on a vocal, how Soothe 2 can help remove some buildup if you're stacking vocals like I am doing here.
Ready, set, go! Time to show who you really are behind the target barrel. I already know I'm gonna be the one to say I want you so. I'm gonna wanna be left for the project's return with you.
So there is a distorted vocal, and then there's a layered vocal in the first half of this section, and there gets some weird build-up thing going on, and I'm using Soothe 2 to kind of clean up that vocal. Let's listen to that one more time.
Ready, set, go! Time to show who you really are behind the target barrel. I already know I'm gonna be the one to say I want you so.
It just helps kind of clean up the vocal, and it lets it sit within the context of these raging high gain guitars. So in the context of a mix, sounds awesome.
Ready, set, go! Time to show who you really are behind the target barrel. I already know I'm gonna be the one to say I want
And that is Soothe 2. I use this pretty much every single day in some fashion or another. Again, all you video editor guys, this is very, very great for having maybe an imperfect dialogue or something like that on using camera audio or in an untreated room. If you get some weird build-up resonances, Soothe 2's got you. I will link down below in the description if you'd like to know more about all things Oeksound and Soothe 2. And with that, you've been wonderful. I've been Fluff. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you liked the video you just watched, please consider subscribing. And if you want to further support me and what I do, consider using some of the affiliate links down below in the description of this video. Go on over to Sweetwater, buy yourself something, and help me out at the same time. It's a win-win for both of us.